Krypton, the TV series that premiered on SyFy. Me and Dustin, this is something me and you both saw. Now, what did you think of it?
I thought it was better than it had any right to be, but that doesn't say much.
How so? You mean it had better any right to be?
All right. I'm a big Superman fan. I'll just openly say that right from the get-go. But even I can see when a series is limited right from the get-go. And one of the biggest things that I kind of liked, I'll go with positive. I liked the choice of actors and some of the aesthetics. I liked that Krypton was a little different, but still fairly alien enough that it was, all right, this is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see where this goes. There were some interesting ideas, especially in episode 2, but especially episode 1 when they reference a certain alcove, maybe familiar to Superman fans, a certain place of solitude. Right. And its use of that term was actually a very interesting twist. And I thought, oh, that could be very interesting if they're going with this angle. And I'm curious to see where it goes. There's a lot of moments where I'm like, all right, that's an interesting character moment. I didn't expect that character to have a lair. Okay, another character has a lair. All right, I'm intrigued. Okay, yeah, I would have said that here. All right, that's cool. So there are a lot of moments when I was like, all right, we're getting a little bit better acting than I would have expected. On par and a little better than CW, which it has had bad reputations, but nowadays CW has gotten pretty good acting so far for their characters, especially their DC shows. I like that it does take fun of itself sometimes, but it is serious enough that when serious things kind of happen, you do go, oh, crap. I also like that they're not afraid to kill characters off almost immediately.
Okay.
I'm okay with it, considering I've done CW where some people just survive things they just should never survive. Right. It's interesting that they're like, all right, no, their person's dead. Nope, there are immediate consequences. Deal with them. Okay. That is continued in episode 2, where the way episode 1 ends, which is nice. That's most of the positive I have to say about it. The negatives go into, all right, first and foremost, please make up your mind what the aesthetics of the show on Krypton are. Everyone looks like they came back from like wearing Reeboks or some version of like Star Trek or some version of like JCPenney outfits that just looked like they've been dunked in dirt. I don't get, like, if you're trying to do the more clinical, I know we're most of the first episode is kind of shown in the rank lists. Where basically Krypton is separated into ranks and guilds, and people have houses like the House of El, which is Superman's family, and the House of Zod, which is Zod's family, another, so as an example. And then there are guilds like the Science Guild, the Protector Guild. They have different professions that you can be under that guild and have certain data and ranks because they're more of a scientific community. The interesting facet from that is that there is a guild that is religious, but only one figure holds that position. And it's like a carryover from when Krypton was more primitive and more religious, but he still holds a very big part on the council that operates with the guilds. So that's interesting. And I was curious if they're going to go more on that, but they've been really kind of careful to show that off. But yeah, for the most part, it's like the people in the wardrobe don't know what they want. Okay. Do you want to do the Richard Donner Superman where it's more Marlon Brando and kind of crystalline-esque? You want to do the more crystalline-esque Superman where it's a night utopia, but it's a scientific utopia, but then it's a tragedy because the planet is going to blow up. Or are we going with the Man of Steel one where they're all a bunch of primitive savages that have basically invaded and destroyed other planets to gain sustenance? But even though they could leave the planet at any time, they just choose not to, which wasn't the case for the Richard Donner one. They didn't have, that was something they just didn't or just they were so quick they didn't have time, except for they just didn't listen to it because they didn't think it was an impossibility. But the way this TV show takes it is it's like a little bit of both, where it's taking elements from Man of Steel, elements from kind of the comics, and a little tiny bit from Richard Donner, and they just kind of pour it into a stew and they stir it around, and that's kind of what you're getting here. And so the wardrobes kind of change. The guy in the religious uniform seems more almost akin to what you'd see in that Richard Donner Superman, kind of the aesthetic robe. And when you look at the guilds and other guild members, you kind of see this more, dare I say, Game of Thrones esque, like high lady or kingly kind of attires, who kind of really cut off cuffs to their neck, the necklines, and really ramrod straight shoulder pads, and it's very kind of sleek but very leather bound, leather-ish, or kind of like a leather jacket, and you're like, okay. But then when you go to Rankless, it's like everyone is just kind of like from Blade Runner, and it's all kind of dirty, and I'm like, just that was really breaking me. Where I'm like, all right, pick an aesthetic. What kind of an alien race are the Kryptons? You got to focus on something. You can't just be Blade Runner and a bunch of other things and just deal with it. We've had other aesthetics before. Right. If you're gonna do something new, then stand on it.
Okay.
But it feels like it's kind of, that was a minor gripe. Two, it's too slow for its own good right now. Each episode is about 45 minutes, but about, I'm gonna say 20 of those minutes you could just cut away.
Okay.
And you could just condense the plot and it almost be quicker.
Okay.
The first episode, I'll give it that, but the second episode, you're like, all right. And by the time they get to the good points, or the good parts of where they deal with Superman and his grandson, and where Seg is kind of redeem his family, that's a large part of it. But it just feels like it takes too long for him to come to these decisions, and that leads me to a major problem. Seg is a stupid character sometimes. Okay. And I'm not saying him as a character is stupid, but what the writers choose to do with him is stupid.
How so?
Seg as a character, the actor seems to be all right. He's actually kind of charismatic sometimes. You can see why he would be kind of been able to survive as long as he has. He's shown some intelligence, but the writers then say he's this, oh, you have such a brilliant mind, Seg. But the first scene we see him in is he's getting beat up in a brawl, and he's making money by getting the crap kicked out of him. That's our introduction to this character now more grown up. Right. No offense, that doesn't seem very smart to me.
Right.
I mean, sure, he's cunning. I'll give him that. That's more of a cunning kind of style, roguish quality. But that's not someone who's a genius scientist. Now, maybe in the future they'll show him actually using science. But a lot of times he just seems to think with his fists and is very passionate. You can have a character who's passionate but incredibly intelligent. That's been done well, where they are scientific and smart, but they're just quick, they're easy to their passions.
Right.
That's been done before, but you got to enhance that with the writing. And it just seems like they use it just to introduce characters and things that they want him to do. So, another example is he has his love interest, which is a Leah Zod. Yes, so one of the love interests of Zod. And anyone doesn't know who General Zod is, General Zod is one of Superman's greatest adversaries and a fellow Kryptonian, right, who was banished by Seg's son, Jor-El, who would send him into the Phantom Zone, which apparently in the series, spoilers, they figured out how to deal or find the Phantom Zone. So there's an interesting link there. But the only reason he does a stupid action to save another person, even though he's been warned, and at that time he really doesn't have a moment to kind of risk this. If he was smart about it, he would just like, all right, let it go. Or he could have talked to the guy instead of going fisticuffs like he immediately does. It's like, look, he's just a drunk. He's scared. He's scared. His brain's been fried. He doesn't know. He doesn't understand what you're trying to tell him. Here, I'll pick him up. We'll move him. Even if he gets shit for it, he's being non-aggressive about it. you
Right.
know? But no, instead it's like the moment the other guy goes, he punches the guy in the face and they start to brawl. I'm like, you just were told why, and the only reason is that happens is that we can be introduced to his love interest that, oh, he has somebody on the other side that'll help him out of binds later in the future. There could have been plenty of other ways to have done that.
Mm.
Hell, they could have been in the brawl, and during she could have been there as one of the people and just interrupts the brawl, and nobody knows it. And then when the guys leave, they go, "All right, everybody, turn in their chips. Here's a little bit of money on the side."
Mm.
And she's like, keep the money. I'm not doing it for you. And she gives a look to Seg. That could have been enough to know, oh, there's a personal attachment there.
Right.
So that's my main kind of issues with it, that it does feel a bit, but it's got a damn fine, interesting premise.
Mm.
It's interesting. And some things they do bring up about legacy and solitude and loneliness, and that Seg is like his grandson, is alone for completely different reasons, is a fascinating parallel and could be really interesting. And the second episode does at least is going towards that direction, and it has promise. But as it is, it just seems like almost kind of falling, as like falling rather than flying. Where I'm worried it's just going to fall on its face, and it looks about to, but then there's some moments where it picks up and it looks like maybe you'll glide out of there and maybe you'll turn it around.
Right.
But that's just me. How do you feel, Josh?
I thought it really wasn't worth coming back for me to continue with the series. I saw the first episode, and like you mentioned, I think that the show starts off with the main character getting into a fight, and just to say, everybody in the show and the main character of the show is Sege, like you said, played by Cameron Cuff.
By the way, that's an awful, awful name, Seg.
Yeah, Segel, who I don't know if that's his name in the comics as well.
It's not.
It's not.
Or like it might have been, and they just put it there just for, like, it's one of those things that they put in the comics. Like, what's Darrell's father's name? Segel. We don't ever have to deal with that ever at the time.
Okay. Yeah, because he's playing the great grandfather of Kal-El. So he's the father of Jor-El and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, like this show, it starts off with a bar fight, and I automatically got a flashback to Star Trek, where James T. Kirk, he got into a fight in a bar, like that was in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek film, and like he is kind of like you said, this cunning, kind of street tough kind of guy, and I was like, okay, how many times have we seen that type of protagonist before? Like somebody who's kind of like a ruffian, and is kind of a little bit of a scoundrel, a little bit, cunning, he's scamming people a little bit in order to make it, because he lives on the poor side of town. Because like you said, the show opens with a Segel's his own grandfather being killed, and
that was interesting.
Yeah,
I was actually cool with that, and I thought that was a really cool intro. And then it immediately deflated any most interest I had when they just go to the bar fight.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of cool Superman qualities just in that, especially with the cape flowing and you got to keep hope and do the right thing.
Yeah,
like you're like, oh yeah, that's very Superman.
And then he even says like, "Be the better man of tomorrow" or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah, it's just a classic thing, Superman thing. Yeah, and yeah, at the beginning of the series, you see them like, so with the crimes committed by Segel's own grandfather, that strips them of their rank, so their house name. Now their name is kind of illegal, like they can't go by the House of El, which was before this prestigious honor. And now they're living kind of on the poor side of Krypton, I guess the ghetto of Krypton. And I get, right, like you said, like the contrast they show. I think you have to have that contrast of showing like the way the poor people live in Krypton and the way the more 1% people live in Krypton, and why they, so I think you have to have that balance and for them to look different.
And that is established with wardrobe, but when they both look the same, like when that attire kind of looks very similar, it's hard to have that amount of dissonance.
That class dissonance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that a little bit. And as far as, star power behind this, like as far as the show goes. There's no really super like stars in this. Like the two of his parents I recognize, like Rupert Graves, who played the detective on Sherlock. Like I recognized him from that. And then you have Paula Malcolmson, who plays his mother, who I recognize from that show with Ray Stevenson. Not Ray Stevenson. I'm sorry. Paul Schreiber. What's the name of that show? It's on Showtime. Dang it, I'm blanking on the name of it. But it's on Showtime, I believe. Yeah, it's a show with Paul Schreiber. I can't think of the name right now. But she plays his wife in that. And so there's no real huge amount of talent in it really. Ray Donovan, that's the name of it. Ray Donovan. Man, I was gonna kill me, Ray Donovan. And the show kind of reminds me a little bit of Caprica, where Caprica, if anybody knows, that was a prequel to the Battlestar Galactica series that focuses on not Admiral Adama's character, but his grandfather. And his grandfather wasn't like a soldier or anything like that. No, that didn't focus on his grandfather. That focused on just his father.
To be fair, Caprica is well liked, even as brief as it was.
Really? Because I saw Caprica and I was bored to tears with Caprica. I couldn't even.
They said it was. I say it's well liked. When I say well liked, I never said it was well praised.
Oh, okay.
I just say it's well liked by its fans. But even I openly admit that I couldn't even get through the first episode.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because I made it like I think like half into first season. I was like, this shit is so boring. Like, oh my god, this shit's ridiculously boring.
I feel you, brother. I feel you.
Yeah, because I was like, if you're gonna do a prequel about Battlestar Galactica, why not do a prequel about the first Cylon War? Which they kind of, which why would you make that into a TV series? But you made that into like a YouTube thing. Like, why would you put the money behind that to make it to a TV show?
Like,
but whatever.
You could have done. You should have reversed that. You can make Caprica into the YouTube series, and then
I was like, that's such a weird decision, but okay, that's whatever. But yeah, this kind of reminded me a lot of that of this kind of this backstory of like who really cares that much about the great grandfather of Kal-El.
Right.
And
like that was my main complaint, and even when we talked about it before, when you're like, who cares? Like you're gonna have to try really hard to make people care because we already know how this is gonna end.
Right
now. I'm curious to see where it goes because I think the idea of of Superman's grandfather is an interesting premise on an earlier Krypton, and kind of seeing Krypton in its glory, but still being flawed is a really interesting angle and could really show some kind of primitive Superman villains and could be a very interesting idea. Like that idea can work and has a very interesting premise, and you can care about these characters despite knowing the end to all of it. It's just a little mini cosmos, and it lends itself to the Superman mythos as a whole, but being its own story. I think that's the best thing it could be. But right now, I don't know about you, but right now it's not working too hard to get my attention. I have to put it's trying, but I feel like it needs to try harder.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. It could turn out to be later on they'll
I
find
plan on watching it again.
I'd love to hear back because maybe because like sometimes with genre shows you maybe need to give them a season.
Sometimes I remember like a couple of them. It took the original Star Trek Next Generation, which hadn't watched it. Apparently, it took until 2 seasons. Like the 3rd season on for it to get what it wanted to be. Like it had some growing pains, and then finally when it hit its 3rd season, it was full on. All right, we're the next Star Trek, the Next Generation.
And then like Buffy, like the 1st season of Buffy was terrible.
First
season of Angel wasn't that good. You know what I mean? Like so. Sometimes genre shows especially maybe need like a season to like find its footing. Like Fringe, like the 1st season of Fringe, I liked the 1st season, but I can understand. But some people saying like it was incredibly boring and dull.
Right.
Like I can kind of see that, very monster of the week type thing. So sometimes shows like that need to kind of find their footing, what works, what doesn't work, what we can improve on. And maybe they'll get a better sense of the characters, because like right now the lead protagonist is kind of like this young chip on his shoulder type guy. It's like I'm kind of sick of seeing those type of characters,
right?
And then
the only difference is he does seem, unlike some, he does at least seem to listen
He's not
So,
such headstrong. He's not that
yeah,
headstrong.
he does seem to at least listen. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. Like, he at least has survival instinct
Uh,
that I can't always give to some shows, especially sometimes CW, where like you are too stupid to live.
right. Yeah, I can see that. So maybe he'll be that type of guy who, even the lead actor kind of does look like a CW actor.
He does.
He looks
He,
very much like a
but
CW.
fortunately, he does act a little bit better.
Yeah. And like I say, he's in a relationship with Alita Zod. He's played by Georgina Campbell. People might know her. She was in the Black Mirror episode "Hang the DJ." She was in that.
But she's good looking, man.
Yeah, so I don't know if they'll do like maybe like a Hatfield and McCoy's thing with their whole relationship, and like she'll maybe turn on him and hate him, and that'll lead to like a feud going on between the Zod.
It's a sci-fi show. What do you think?
Yeah, they'll probably do that. Which I'm like, I can already
Yeah.
foresee where that shit.
Yeah, no,
I can already
that's my
foresee.
problem. Now, if they go for a Hatfield McCoy moment, but then the twist is they're not going to have one, I love that.
Then it turns it'll be Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, man.
Um, and then you have like another comic book character coming in. So you have like Adam Strange, who people know him.
Yeah.
He's kind of a deep cut DC character who's like a
Yeah,
human.
he's one of those characters you have to. Adam Strange. All right, time to go on the wiki.
Yeah, because I remember him. I think he showed up in Justice League the animated series in one
He
episode.
did very briefly. He also had his own episode, and it was one of the more recent animated Batman stuff. Batman Brave and the Bold.
Oh, okay.
There's an entire episode on Adam Strange.
Yeah, and I think he showed up in maybe Young Justice. I think if I remember him correctly.
Yeah, he's one of those. He was inspired directly by John Carter of Mars.
Yeah, because
to be basically DC's version of John Carter from Mars.
Yeah, basically, because he's just like in the comics, he's just a human guy with like a jetpack. That's all.
Jetpack and the zoom gun or zoom cannon, which he can use it to traverse time and space.
Yeah. And he's somebody that's coming back from the future to tell Kal-El's grandfather that hey, like Krypton, somebody's come back to kill you. So kind of like Terminator-esque kind of vibe. Then the person that's coming back from the future is all to destroy Krypton is Brainiac. So he's gonna try to kill Kal-El's grandfather to basically kill Kal-El, and that kind of goes into another thing too of like, hey, you're destined to be great and all this kind of stuff, and you have greatness, and your grandson becomes the greatest hero the universe has ever known.
Right, but I do like that he's just like, you're full of shit.
Yeah. And also,
I do like that.
In the little bit I've seen, like the actor who plays Adam Strange, I didn't think that he was that good. Like the actor.
No, he's actually probably one of the more worst elements of the show, sadly.
Yeah, I thought he was actually kind of bad.
Honestly, his almost inclusion in it at this point, could not have been in the show and not have been all right with it.
Yeah.
Like it almost would have been better and more organic for the show if they just found Brainiac on their own and this was a tale. And like he comes in later, or like he then shows up and helps out and then explains who he is.
Yeah, I think that would have probably been better. You know what I mean? Than them just
like
introducing him in the very first episode.
Yeah, like I thought that was the weirdest. I'm like, whoa, don't you save that for like season 2 or halfway through season 1?
Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, I'm not that interested to continue. I mean, you said you are.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I'll watch it in passing. Like if it's I will. I'm interested to either see how far it grows or decays.
Yeah, if you can come back with a report on season 1 and see,
I'll keep you in touch.
Yeah, see how it plans out from them. I don't really see this show going past the first season.
No, if they're lucky, they'll get a season 2.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So moving on from discussing Krypton. Hello, thanks for checking out our content. If you liked it, let us know, and if you didn't, let us know that as well. If you want to see more content, we post every Saturday on SoundCloud and YouTube at The Afternoon Tune. You can also find us through various social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all one word at The Afternoon Tune. And if you don't deal with any of that social media stuff, you can also find us through our email at theafternoontune@gmail.com. And don't forget to always stay